doing it now.
Oh, okay. Greetings, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Game Club. I am True
Woo!
Legend Killer, and I am uh, joined by my friends here. Yoda, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Yoda. I'm on every episode of the Game Club where we play games and then we talk about them like old ladies in a book club. But it's cooler than that because it's for video games.
In the middle,
Yeah.
we have Screw Loose.
Yo, what's up? I'm Screw Loose.
Wow,
That's it.
he
He's,
sounds
he's got a
psyched.
few screws loose.
And we have a resident old man. Say hi, old man.
Hi, old man.
Thank you.
Resident old man.
Resident Oldman.
I always feel bad for Gray because he's not really that old.
No,
People just call him-
I'm older than
I'm pretty
you.
sure that Gray says he's old more than we say he's old.
I don't know. I just feel like,
Gray, we all love you. We would be lost without
That's
you.
true. We hear
Anyways.
there's a movie coming out about you called Logan. Old man Gray Wolf Logan.
That's funny. Anyways, this week was my pick. I apologize in advance. My life is very hectic right now. I'm currently getting my credential to become a teacher, and my week is exceedingly busy. So I wasn't able to get out the article. So anyone that missed last week's episode, I apologize if you didn't know what we were playing this week. But this week, we have been playing Alan Wake. I tasked our friends here to play through the first episode. The game is set up very much like a TV show. So you can count the first season of Alan Wake if they ever decide to make a sequel that isn't American Nightmare, but I'll talk about that later. You can count this as season 1 of Alan Wake, and, there's been rumblings that they're working on season 2, but I don't know.
Yes.
With that being said, a little background about Alan Wake. So, I am a pretty big Remedy fan, the makers of this game. They are behind, of course, Max Payne 1 and 2. Max Payne 2 is on the top list of some of my favorite games of all time. Simply for, they're not really, I guess, for their time, they were kind of groundbreaking shooters, but more so the noir feel of, especially Max Payne 2. The narration, the way they made it almost like a comic book and cutscenes was very beautiful. So, back in, I believe it was 2005 at E3, Remedy announced Alan Wake. Of course, it wasn't released until 2010, so it had this 5-year cooking period. I remember
really?
when it, yeah,
I thought this was a 360 launch game. I guess not, huh?
No. This was, I believe 2010, the game's released in 2010.
that's what I heard.
It was pushed back a lot. It went through kind of a development hell, but the nice thing about Remedy is they always take their time with games. Now, sometimes their games are buggy, like I've heard Quantum Break is. But with that being said, I followed the development of Alan Wake very closely because they said from the get-go that number one, it's going to be a psychological thriller, and it is. People that call it a horror game, people at Remedy are really not okay with that because it is a psychological, more psychological thriller than anything. But with that being said, so since 2005, I kind of followed the development of this game, and then eventually it kind of came out that this game was going to be about a writer. And for anyone that's listened to Game Club enough, or our podcast, you will know that I just graduated with an English major. I'm fighting to become an English teacher. And I love to write. So, for me, a video game that was about a writer was a really interesting prospect. And not only that, this game is flooded with these imageries of iconic psychological horror or horror in general. from images from The Shining, a lot of inspiration from Stephen King himself. In fact, the game's opening monologue is a quote from Stephen King from an Entertainment Weekly article that he wrote back in 2008. That basically, the opening narration says, it's about the fact that nightmares exist outside of logic. There's little fun to be had in explanations. And it's about the poetry of fear. So I just kind of summed that up. I didn't actually quote it. But for anyone that played the game or is planning to play the game, you'll see a lot of inspiration from things like Twilight Zone,
Twin Peaks, and
from
all
Twin
that good
Peaks,
stuff.
from X-Files, from various Stephen King. Eventually, there is a hedge maze that you have to go through in this game, and
Oh, wonderful. Is there a frozen Jack Nicholson as well?
yeah. But with that being said, the makers of the game cited that Brett Ellis, Neil Gaiman, and the author of House of Leaves were a big inspiration for this game. So this game in of itself is not only rooted in all these kind of masters of psychological horror, but in of itself, it's like this living, breathing work of, like a novel almost, presented as a TV show, mind you. There's also plentiful hints at the Max Payne games within Alan Wake.
Which are two of these guys made two of my favorite third-person shooters ever as a kid.
So with that being said, I mean, Alan Wake is a writer. He is known for writing these hard-boiled detective stories that are basically Max Payne. In fact, if you find, there's a flashback scenario where you find a transcript from his last book in his series of books that he writes, and the narration is done by the guy who voiced Max Payne in the game. And that's really cool. Another big thing about Remedy is because of where they're based out of, there's a lot of hints to Norse mythology within this game, just like there was in Max Payne. That's just some. I'll get into more later, more about the actors that they drew the likeness for, or the voice work actors. I just wanted to give a little bit of brief background to the game before we kind of jump into your guys' initial thoughts. So I will start with the one that I know probably didn't personally play it, but probably hopefully watched a video of it. Gray, what was your initial thoughts?
So you're right. I tried it and I got up to all the way to Stucky, and there were just too many guys, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to watch this. And so I did.
That's the first boss thing.
Yeah, that's the first. It was okay until then. It's a surprisingly slow shooter. That was the thing that was surprising to me, because the way I understood it was going to be the darkness and there was going to be hordes of dudes all the time, and then it wasn't like that. Yeah. It was a lot slower.
It picks up a little bit later on, but there is. I do love how you pointed out how for a third-person shooter, it is rather slow, and it is because it's tedious. It can become tedious. I never personally found it too tedious, but the slow also comes to the fact that you have to shine your light on these guys and get off their shield before you can shoot. And sometimes that means dodging hits from them and ducking and weaving. It really slows down the action.
Of what undid me in the Stucky fight, because there's lots of them, and this is the thing I was worried about. And I just couldn't cope with the number of people at the same time. And I kept on dodging into other people, and it killed me.
I was surprised too, because I'm playing on easy. I assume you are as well, Gray.
Well, I was. Yeah.
Well, you can only your first playthrough. You can only play on easy or normal. I play it on. I mean, on my 360, I've beaten this game probably upwards of 10 times.
Well, I just picked easy so I wouldn't have to shoot dudes all that many times, because I find that a lot of third-person shooters, their difficulty is how squishy are the people, and even on easy, though, it takes 2 headshots to take somebody down.
Yeah, you get more powerful weapons later on, more powerful handguns and stuff like that. But yeah, there is, and that goes into the psychological horror aspect, or psychological thriller. I keep calling it horror, when Remedy doesn't want me to. But with that being
I'm
said,
sure there's probably some people who get scared at points in this game.
There's frightening stuff in there. You're walking down. There's a bridge that you have to cross, like there's a waterfall, and then there's like trees that have been dropped onto the waterfall to make you able to cross the waterfall. And as you fall down, you literally have to jump down like a little ledge. And as you're jumping down, like out of nowhere, there's this scary face that comes out of nowhere. It's, ah! So there are elements of horror in there.
Yes.
For sure. And like there's creepy things that happen all the time. There's a point where you pick up a page, and the page actually tells you what's going to happen soon down the line. You're going to go into a gas station, there's going to be a TV there, and you're going to see yourself. And then the moment of unveiling, when you actually get there, that's pretty creepy. So there are elements of horror here. Oh, P.S. We're going to spoil the game completely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there will be spoilers.
Yeah.
And the thing
welcome
is,
to how GameClub works.
But with that being said, Alan Wake, of the game itself, thrives on spoilers within the game. You talked about the manuscript pages that you find, and that's a big thing of this story. So, Alan Wake wakes up after basically taking this trip with his wife, and he wakes up in a car accident in the middle of the woods, and no memory of what's happened. Yet, as you progress through the game, you find these manuscript pages, out of order, mind you, as well, that will tell you what is going to happen at some point in the game. And if you seek out, now you cannot find every manuscript in the game until you unlock Nightmare or Hard Mode. And getting the ones in hard mode is incredibly hard because they're far off the beaten trail in the dead of darkness, so guys start hoarding in on you. But there are a good, I think, 50 pages in all that warn you about what is to come in this game, and it's a really nice mechanic in a way that it kind of spoils, but until you beat the game, you don't know how it spoils it, because you don't know when this is going to happen or if it will happen. So
it's interesting though that you actually suggested that the game starts with the car crash, because the one thing that I was hoping was that he was going to be an unreliable narrator. So you go through 2 false starts before you actually get to the car crash. And the 2 false starts were me thinking, okay, so what's going to happen here is the entire game is going to be a head screw where you're not actually going to know when Alan Wake is asleep or awake or what is actually going on. So it's interesting that you probably gave it away, that is where the actual thing starts.
No, that's not where I would say it starts, because I believe it starts with the nightmare that you begin the game with, personally.
Okay.
I think the true start is you waking up in the car before you get on the ferry with your wife.
Okay.
I just think that most people will count the start of the game after the car crash.
Yeah.
Because that's really when you kind of more take control of the game.
Okay. Fair enough. Because my take on it really was, okay, we're going to get this unreliable narrator, and we're going to have to piece together the points where he is awake and asleep, because it's alluded to in the game's name. He's Alan Wake. But we don't know when he is awake or not. And that is going to cause us story trouble, because we're going to have problems piecing together what's actually going on.
See, I like the idea of... I've always liked the idea of stories where a writer is experiencing something that they are either currently writing or have written, and maybe what they're writing is causing them...
grief.
Yeah, the grief or to be on this sort of adventure. But yeah, you definitely get a sense of untrustworthiness as to what's actually being written and what's actually being experienced. And it intrigues me to an extent. But I do... certainly feel, I hate using the term, but I'm going to do it again, ludonarrative dissonance, when the game is about a writer and what he writes and what he's experiencing in this weird setting, And then what you do to reflect that is shoot people a lot.
Yes.
I have to say, one of my favorite things in any video game actually comes from, granted, when he's awake, not in the dream, in the very beginning. But the first time that he fires a gun is one of the first times I've in a video game that I've ever had the narrator say, like, I've never shot a gun before, and like go on to describe it and how he felt sick to his stomach and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the problem right after that is that he just goes on shooting.
Yeah.
There's no point where he just shrugs and goes, I can't do this. He just picks up the gun, shoots the one guy, has a moment of remorse, and then goes, fuck it. I'll just keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a pretty good shot, too, for someone who's never picked up a gun before.
It was, to me, it was still a nice touch.
He has auto aim on.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's a nice touch.
Yeah.
You have auto aim on yours? I don't have any mouse acceleration or auto aim at all. I think it controls very, very well. I honestly don't have any problem with how the game plays.
That was meant to be a joke.
Oh.
Alan Wake himself has auto aim. I know.
He writes auto aim into his stories so that he never misses.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. There you go.
So, Screw, what is your initial thoughts?
You know what? I really like it. I think it's really fun. Like I mentioned to you in Slack that I really hate the camera. The camera's fucking terrible.
Yeah, I just don't like where it's positioned. I think it controls fine.
That's it.
It's just the angle it's at. I can't see anything.
It's not so much that I can't see. I can't walk in a straight line. He's always wanting to veer to the right, and I have to strafe left.
I think they stuck it at like a weird angle like that so that he would always be in the rule of thirds, and so the game would look more cinematic. But in actual usage, it just sort of hinders your ability to play their game all that well.
I would appreciate having a little bit of an adjustment for that.
Or having a control to say, all right, I want to switch the camera to the left side, I want to switch the camera to the right side, but instead it just
more
does
centered or something. You know, I do like the game though; it's a lot of fun. I like the world building; is really cool.
Mm-hmm. I thought this was a far older game, so I guess it's less impressive how the graphics have held up. But they have held up very well over 6 years.
I
just thought they had held up this well over 10 years, and I was like, damn.
I think this, like I've said before, and the reason I nominated this game is simply because it's one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's very hard to do a really good third-person shooter at times, especially in this craze when this came out. Because this was around the time of...
Everyone was making it.
Everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
So this was,
especially if they had announced it in 2005 when Gears and stuff just came out.
With Gears, and you had Resident Evil 4, and as great as Resident Evil 4 is... I still had problems with the camera in that myself too. But Resident Evil has always had camera problems.
Okay, so let me put this into perspective for you. Be grateful that this wasn't made at the beginning of the dawn of 3D. Because
it's nowhere near as bad as Super Mario 3D. That's for sure.
One of the first games that I ever played that had a third-person camera was a thing called Gabriel Knight 3. Now, anyone who knows and has played that game knows that game's camera wasn't actually on a tether. So what would happen is you had two sets of keys for the game. One set of keys moved your guy, right? And that was fine. The other set of keys literally moved the camera, okay? And it was totally possible for you to get the camera stuck places. So the best thing to do would be to move your guy and then to move your camera after the guy to make sure that it didn't get stuck. So be grateful. I mean, the camera in Alan Wake is a bit wonky, but it's not like that.
No, that's true. No, and like I said, it's not the third person that bothers me. I actually enjoy third person games.
It's the placement of the camera.
Yeah, it's like at a 60-degree angle, facing to like I said, the thing that bothers me the most about it is that he's always walking to the right. It's like he needs a trim adjustment, Now I do really like the game. Like the voice acting is really good. I like the level design. The storytelling is really cool. I don't like the product placement very much.
that is a big thing.
Guided by Microsoft, whatever it's called. GPS.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that was
Lincoln and Energizer. Right now,
Yeah.
I say this. I've put this up in my list as it's a con, right? But at the same time, right, I don't know that it really is. I'm not a huge fan of product placement like that. But at the same time, this,
it's
it's
done more
set,
subtly than most things, and it's supposed to be set in the real world. So
right?
I
Yeah. So
let it
it kind of
pass.
gives you another little bit more reality, a feeling of more reality of the overall everything, right? So
Yeah,
I kind of like it, but I also don't like it because it's just like, ooh, wonder who sponsored this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that being said, it was one of the. It did go down in a negative mark for the game. Was how many Verizon placements their advertisements were.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point later on in the game, we'll eventually get there. You have to sit through an actual commercial of Verizon.
God.
No.
Because
That's
it's on a
terrible.
TV and it's in the middle of. You'll know when you get there. And it's at
And
that
then
point.
we're
At that point, it's laughable because it's breaking up this tension, but at the same time, it's like I can't believe they're basically making me watch this.
Yeah.
With that being said, like I've seen worse product placement in games, but this
Oh,
is
yeah.
probably one of the worst.
Yeah,
No,
if you
I
ever-
wouldn't say it's the worst. It's noticeable, but I mean, it's not going to totally pull you out of the world. It doesn't break my immersion.
No, and
So
that's
if anybody ever played God, what year was it? 08, 07? They had a free version of the first Far Cry game that came out. And it was totally free.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't know they made a free version. Oh
Yeah,
my
they did.
God.
Yeah, they set it out for free and everything, but it was McDonald's ads everywhere. They were like billboards that they just put around on this abandoned island, right?
That is
It
amazing.
was just had like the
Oh
golden
my
arches and
God.
like cheeseburgers and stuff, and it was like, what is this?
Okay.
So McDonald's has moved up
Free
in the world because
McDonald's.
in the 80s and the early 90s, McDonald's actually got people to make video games for them that
Yeah.
they would give away with meals.
Yeah, that's right. I remember
It was tragic.
that. Yeah,
that's
so I
pretty
thought
funny.
that's pretty bad. Like, because this is, I mean, if you played Far Cry, the first one, you know that this island is like there's no McDonald's on this island. Okay.
It's just making you wish how much you could get back to civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it'd be like playing the new Tomb Raider and seeing a Burger King ad in one of the
Yeah,
tombs.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it was comical. It was stupid, and the game still played fine. It didn't really hurt anything except that you were just like face palmed all the time. Every time one of those came up, it was just the
Oh,
silliest
that's
thing.
good.
But
Well,
anyway,
we'll move on to Yoda. What is your initial thoughts of the game?
My initial thoughts are a lot better than when I initially tried playing this on a 360. I guess it wasn't all as long as ago as I thought it was, only 6 years ago. I stopped playing it because I didn't really care for playing the actual game. I was interested in the story, I just never ended up looking it up later, so I never learned what the story is. So thankfully I didn't spoil myself on that. I'm still not a huge fan of the third-person game mechanics. I think the game controls very well. But I think it's funny because was it last week or the week before we played To the Moon and we talked about is this the best medium for this game? And I think that question applies very well to Alan Wake as well because it presents itself as a television show. It even breaks itself into episodes, gives you recaps right away. And seeing as how the core mechanic of the game is shooting people who don't seem to have any impact on the core narrative, makes me kind of feel like maybe this could have worked better as like a Twin Peaks inspired TV show.
Now, with that being said, at the same time this was released, they did have an episodic online. It was released on Xbox Live, and you downloaded the episodes, and I'm sure you could find them on YouTube now. But there was 6 short episodes.
Oh, is that Bright Falls? It was like a prequel, right?
No, I forget the name of it now. I can look it up. I have them all.
Bright Falls.
But Bright Falls web series.
Yeah.
And it ends this web series ends right when Alice and Alan pull into basically Bright Falls. And that's really cool. So it's really interesting, and it kind of gives you see the actors that they visually base the characters off of act in these live action scenes. So the girl in the diner is there, and she's her, you know.
So this is something Remedy has done for a while then, because Quantum Break did this too, and it was terrible.
Was it not good?
I thought Bright Falls was pretty good. It wasn't great.
It has a pretty high rating on IMDb, 8.3. IMDb, everyone who rates things hates things. So
now, if you want to watch it, if you want to go back after this and find it on YouTube and watch it, you're probably going to like it because you're already knee deep into the story.
Yeah.
I might check it out actually.
And it's kind of cool to see the girl from the diner. In live action, and she looks just like she does. And Alan Wake and Alice Wake, in the very last episode, look just like they do in the game. It's kind of cool to see him morph into live action and realize how good the graphics are for Alan Wake, even 6 years later.
Mm-hmm. One thing that is interesting about you brought up the lady in a diner. One thing that is interesting about Alan Wake is that Alan Wake in this world is a sort of a pseudo celebrity. He's not quite getting to washed up yet, but he's on his way. And so one of the things that's very interesting is that when you encounter people, some of them know you and some of them don't. And this girl literally fangirls over you, and that's not something we see a lot in the video games at all.
Yeah.
Because she just comes around and says, are you married? And he's like, yeah.
It's like, I just really want to get my house keys.
And actually, this is like one of the scenes that I actually want to narrow in on and then shift into another thing really quick. So, after the beginning nightmare of the game, you wake up in your car, your wife is driving you, because up to this point, Alan has decided to end his very successful run of crime dramas. With that being said, so he's kind of like what Gray was saying, this Dean Koontz-esque sort of writer, that he would put out a lot of books, but at the same time he's not on the level of like these great authors, but because he puts out so many books, he is known to a wide variety of people. If you walked around in our world and like, hey, do you know of Dean Koontz? They may have never read his book, but they know his name. Or Tom Clancy or something like that, So when you get to the diner, I feel is when this video game world really comes to life. And in this scene itself, there is so many nods to one of my favorite shows of all time, Twin Peaks. You have the woman in the back corner that is hugging a lantern that is the log lady from Twin Peaks.
You have just the diner itself, which is like horrific.
Yeah, it looks exactly like the main diner.
Now there is an achievement. There's an achievement in the game for finding all the coffee thermoses in the game, and the achievement is damn fine coffee.
I knew it was going to be that.
And so there's a lot of nods to Twin Peaks, but in a very respectful way. To the fact of, I had a friend that I introduced this game to. He had never known about Twin Peaks. He had never seen Twin Peaks. He played this game, and then I told him about Twin Peaks, and he went and watched it. And he's like, if it wasn't for Alan Wake, I would have never watched Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I kind of want to go watch Twin Peaks on Netflix now. Actually, I haven't watched that since it was on TV.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's on Netflix now. It's probably worth rewatching. It's very good.
But there's the game comes to so much life in this small diner. We see that Alan, like you said, is a pseudo celebrity. You have these two old wash-up biker rockers in the corner bickering, who I don't want to ruin anything, but they call you by a different name.
If they're listening to this, they played what we played, so
Well, no, they come back. These rockers come back later, and it kind of goes. The great thing of this game is the music. So they ask you to turn on the jukebox for them, and it's 2 limes and a coconut that plays.
Yeah.
There's eventually an achievement that later on in the game, if you go back and you sidetrack into the diner and go to turn on the jukebox again, it plays the same song and you get an achievement for that. So I gave you a way to get a free achievement. But with that being said, the music is very beautiful in this game. After each episode, there is a song that plays. This ranges from David Bowie to Roy Orbison to
Right. And the
Poe.
funny thing about this particular episode is that the song for this one is In Dreams. It's
Yeah.
so well set up. My God.
Yeah, and there is so as I mentioned earlier, one of the inspirations to this game was the book House of Leaves. If anyone has ever read it, it's a really weird book the way it's set up. But it's very much like Alan Wake. At the same time, the author of that book, his sister is the recording artist known as Poe. And eventually she, at the same time that book was brought out that her brother wrote, she wrote a companion CD to go along with this book. And one of her songs, Haunted, is featured at the end of one of the episodes of Alan Wake. And again, at the end of each episode, they play a song when it says, end of episode or whatever. Each one ties in perfectly with the episode. With that being said, the other thing that I really wanted to focus on was one thing that I absolutely adore, and it's not forced, is the relationship, because this game is about relationships. And the big one here that we are introduced to is Alan's relationship with his wife. It's a very loving relationship, something that I really like seeing. A very realistic relationship, really. Now we see more of this through flashbacks and interactions throughout the rest of the game. There's a beautiful flashback later on when they first move in together after being married that I want to talk about further. But what did you guys think? Did you think, because I know some people in relationships and games, they kind of roll their eyes. Did you felt it was too forced? Did you like it? What was your thoughts on it?
So I like it so far. I mean, we've only gotten up to chapter 2, so there hasn't really been much to it other than it seems like, when they get to the house on the island, and Alice is like, maybe this is a good idea to start writing again, and it kind of gives you the idea that Alan hasn't put out a book for a while.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want
to. He actually points it out. He hasn't written in 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the agent calls while you're on the boat too, and he's like, "Is that vacation getting the creative juices flowing? I really want you to make a book, so please, we need money."
Yeah. And Alan gets angry. He's
very,
like, "Look,
very
man,
Californication-esque.
I don't want to bring work home. I'm on vacation. Let's just enjoy our time here." And he's like, "I'm going to go for a walk," and plot transpires and this and that. I don't know. I like it so far.
Yeah.
I'll be able to find out as we play more.
Yeah. I think it's too early to judge from what I've seen.
Yeah. Right now, if I had to judge his relationship with his wife, it's a very weird relationship because at the moment, there's a lot of weirdness transpiring between them. You get to Bright Falls, you go to this house, and then she says, "Oh, this is a trap. I brought you here so you could write." Yeah. Surprise! And then the other thing, and that's weird. But then the other side of the coin is that she's afraid of the dark, so he has to wander around and get the lights going. And my take on that was, he must feel somewhat resentful to her, and maybe he's not crazy about what he has to do to make her happy. And so this weird feeling between the two of them flows both ways, So at this point, it's a little early to say that they love each other and it's a good relationship. Maybe that happens later on in the game as it goes along, but right now it seems like a very weird, not forced relationship, but it's a strained relationship.
Yeah, it doesn't feel forced. That's a good point. You get that right away. That they obviously have been together a while. They know each other very well and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's again, you'll know when we get there. There's some very beautiful flashbacks that may change the way that you feel. I know the first time that I really like that you brought this up, Gray. The first time I played the game, um, I thought it was a very kind of bitch move to, force him to write because I know as a writer or, pseudo writer or whatever,
Right.
um, you
Writing
know,
doesn't just happen on command.
yeah, and it's hard enough that this guy is a writer, and now that he's finished his series and he does want to write, um, something is blocking him. Um, and obviously she's very worried about it. His best friend and agent is very worried about it. So it's kind of under false pretenses that she brings him here, but at the same time, there's love in what she's doing because it's been 2 years and she's been very supportive, but she knows that that's his livelihood and it's who he is. Um, and so the second time I played it, I was able to see it more
Although,
from as a
yeah.
loving gesture than it was a cruel gesture. But for a first time player, it does come across kind of cruel. And then the power goes out and he has to, save
Rescue
her.
her.
Um,
Yeah.
and that kind of ties into another aspect of the game, and you guys are kind of being introduced to it. I believe this game, since it's a central idea, has some of the best lighting in any video game I've ever
Oh
played.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the thing also here, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit, is that Alan Wake is about the distinction between. It even says so in the name again. It's the distinction between being awake and being asleep, and so there's lots of nods to daylight and nightlight, and how like the two are distinctly different, and how because there's this radio guy who comes on at night, and he there's this point where Alan Wake is in a super scary situation, and this guy's just casually strolling in the woods, and everything is awesome, and then someone calls in and says, "Oh, hey, my doggy's gone missing. Could you help me find him?" And the thing is that you're in the darkness then, but every so often you end up in pools of light, and when you end up in pools of light, it's like heavenly light. It
Yeah.
saturates everything,
Yeah.
and so there's lots of light and shadow stuff going on here, which is again great because it's talking about the divide between being awake and being asleep.
Yeah, and
Agreed.
I think
Much agree. So wow.
this heavenly light idea even goes so far as to as you're outside in the darkness, because the longer you are, the more um, there's not necessarily a music, but the wind picks up, and eventually, the longer you are in shadows or in darkness, um, possessed dark people will just appear. Um, but when you
Yeah.
get into,
Endlessly.
yeah, endlessly, it's an endless. But with that being said, once you get into the light, you no longer hear the wind. It's just silence and peace, and it's really kind of a cool aspect that Gray pointed out. It's this almost heavenly light. It's a safe zone,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's just a really interesting. Again, I think this game is one of the best lighting mechanics I've ever seen in a video game. Um, but with that
Yeah,
being said, it kind of has to
rightly
because it's
so.
central. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
central to the plot.
Right.
So I think you also, Gray, raised an interesting point because they talked about on the radio broadcasts um, of my dog has gone missing. An interesting aspect from early development of this game was it wasn't just going to be darkness possessed people that you had to fight.
Hello. Hello. What's going on? Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
All right, everything
That was
seems to
pretty
work.
weird.
That was pretty
weird.
That was weird. I wonder if Google's servers had a poop. Sorry about that, listeners.
Little hiccup there.
Little
What
hickety
was the
up.
last? What was the last thing you got me saying?
So
We-
lost the dog.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to go
Yes.
back. Okay, so interesting aspect about the game was in early development there was actually going to be. Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, it got really quiet.
It's happening again.
I thought Google was messing up. An interesting aspect was in early development there was going to be enemy animals also. Now later on you fight flocks of birds and stuff like that. But in the original art book, because I have the art book from when I bought the special edition of the game, and the special edition strategy guide, because I love this game so much that anything I could find on it I bought. But in the art book, there are character designs for deers that are possessed by the darkness, bears that are possessed by the darkness, rabid dogs and wolves that are possessed by the
Yeah,
darkness.
because I mean, literally, my thought was, as Alan encounters people, because this is what has been happening so far. As Alan encounters people, the people get taken. Because this is what happens with the landlord. His name is Stucky, and this is where I died. Alan doesn't encounter him directly, but it turns out that Stucky gets possessed by the darkness. And so the minute I heard this radio broadcast with this guy saying, "Hey, can you find my dog?" the first thing that flashed through my mind was, "Oh God, we're going to have to fight a hellhound or something."
Yeah, and I think in the original, it must have been pretty late in development that they took those aspects out. I think, and to me, it's kind of interesting. I see why they took those out of the game because it was during fear of upsetting PETA or whatever. But I thought it was a kind of a missed opportunity because it's based in a fake town in Washington. You're very much out in the wilderness through about 90% of the game, and you never find animals that are possessed.
That's true.
I always felt that kind of broke immersion at times, especially when you're running through the woods in the beginning and try to, get back to civilization or whatever.
It would be good to at least have animals there. Even if they were not possessed animals, just to give you a little more environment. But it's something I didn't even think about.
I didn't either.
But yeah, it's a good point.
Now, eventually, like I said, you come across flocks of birds, murders of crows that are possessed by the darkness, and I just thought that was interesting that they keep the birds but nothing else. And I kind of justified it that animals have this sense of danger, so when danger's around, they run away, or they go really quiet. And I was like, okay, I can kind of justify that, but at the same time, when you're walking through the woods in a place that is known for their deer hunting, you would think you would find a deer somewhere.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I mean, I could talk about this game for hours. Is there anything about so far that you guys want to bring up that you experienced in this first episode?
I'm sad that it's not actually an unreliable narrative now, because I was looking forward to unraveling the story. No, I'm all sad.
Well, just keep watching or playing or both.
I kind of like the way that the story is unfolding. We talked briefly about the manuscript pages and that you can find them and it will tell you an action that's going to happen, right? So it's coming, but you don't know exactly when. I kind of like that. I also, I don't know. I hate to call it complaints, right? They're not really complaints. It's just little things. Like, I don't like the dodging in the game. I find it to be really unreliable.
I think it could be a bit better. It certainly seems like it's the Witcher 2 kind of dodging, where you hit dodge and then he has to scratch his ass for a little bit and then actually do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it
it
also feels a little weird to me because it's like a shift move, and I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly wanting to hit spacebar to jump or like roll out of the way, and it doesn't do it. Or I
And it
dodge
is
into somebody
very
else, and it just takes some getting used to, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't hate the game. I certainly really am having a lot of fun with the game, and I like the little Easter egg kind of like sideshow type stuff, like the Night Springs episode.
mhm.
You know, and if you watch the whole thing, it's pretty cool. You know,
And also very creepy.
yeah. You know,
And you are supposed to watch them all the way through because there is an achievement for doing so.
yeah, to see what's on TV. I don't know, man. I don't really care about achievements
No.
anymore.
Yeah.
I used to
I
love
mean,
getting them, but
They're
there is
kind of
one.
interesting because you realize that Alan, he got his start basically by writing for this TV show.
Yeah.
And also, particularly that episode is interesting because I'm going to spoil the episode very quickly for people who are listening in. The idea behind this episode of the TV show is that there's this guy who is on TV, and he's decided that he's going to talk about the many worlds theory. And the way he brings this up is that he's got this machine, this generator, that can protect him no matter what happens in this reality right now. So as long as the generator is on, anyone can do anything to him and he won't die. So they're on live TV, like this is how it's set up, and the guy has a gun, and every time he puts the gun to his head, it doesn't fire. Every time he puts the gun to his head, it's like a blank bullet. But every time he takes it away from his head and he shoots something, there's a bullet in the gun. So, you know, someone accidentally trips over the cable, and the generator stops working, and so he shoots himself on live national TV. But
Yeah.
it's great again because this is I can see how this is all building in Alan Wake's little world. Is that Alan Wake is going to look at this kind of thing and say, what is real and what is not real, and is what is happening to me and not happening to me. You know, because they're pretty binary states here, and I love all these little things that are converging. It's one of the I talked about this in To the Moon, where I said everything is building towards this one moment and everything is relevant, and I think that's happening a lot here in Alan Wake as well. Absolutely everything, the sound, the way the light works, the way the people get taken and then dropped into your nightmares. All this stuff is building to one big reveal at the end, and it's great to see that they put it together so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of like dramatic irony, I think, going on, because you tend to know things before Alan does.
Yeah.
You know, I'm enjoying it. I really like it. It's a lot of fun.
And again, it's one of those things that the music becomes even more important later on in the game. There's a great Norwegian band that is throughout this game called the band in real life is called Poets of the Fall, but in the game,
Hello.
We just lost him again.
just be on the listen for that.
In the game, it's what? That's where we lost you.
Yeah,
You
you
Oh.
bumped out for a second there.
Sorry, in the band, I believe in the game they are called. Hold on, let me look it up. Old Gods of Asgard.
Okay.
But the real band name that's behind all the music is called Poets of the Fall. And I actually got into this band because of this video game and looked up their music, and they're all on Spotify, and they're a really cool band. And they're finished, like I said, so it's really cool.
Sweet.
So with that being said, I am under the impression that you guys are enjoying this game and want to keep playing, correct?
I would, yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it enough to see where the
Whether
story
it's for
goes.
GameClub or not, I'm going to keep playing it.
So with that being said, if you guys want to keep going, we're going to push the game a little bit further because we don't want to make this a 6-episode series. So with that being said,
yeah, the first
would you
episode
guys-
was honestly pretty short, so
yeah. So some are a little bit longer and some are a little bit shorter. So let's push for finishing episode 3. So that gets you all the way through 2 and 3. And if you guys are next
then
time
we'll only
want
have
even
4,
more,
5, and 6 to go.
exactly. Unless you guys got the bonus episodes and you want to do those as well. But Yeah, so for this time, let's play through episode 3. So episode 2 is called Taken, episode 3 is called Ransom. Finish at the end of episode 3.
Okay. Sounds good.
Got it.
What the hell's going on?
I don't know.
I don't know. It was weird.
Okay.
That was
Yeah,
weird.
I don't know why
This is
everything's breaking today.
This is the weirdest, one of the weirdest game club sessions since the podcast when Dr. S came in and hung up on everyone.
I guess before it craps out again, thank you for joining us on Game Club. Again, we are playing Alan Wake, and we will be playing through episode 2 and 3 for next week.
Yeah. Well, he's going to tell you guys about that on the website this week, too.
Yes.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
All right.
If we're lucky.
See you next week, Internet.
Bye-bye.